Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm Vicki Nedling, and your host, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The purpose of this podcast is to have topics and guests that will empower you to take your business or your life to the next level. My guest today is Dr. Peggy Gleason. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Peggy. Dr. Peggy Gleason is a Duke-trained certified integrative, I might have to practice that word, integrative health coach with several other certifications as a life and wellness coach, and holds a doctoral degree in natural health. She has been a nurse for over 4 decades and specialized in critical care nursing for 30 years. Her passion is to coach nurses by exploring all dimensions of their lives, physically and emotionally. She has inspired women all over the globe to continue their success as professional women while finding time for living a life of more contentment, better health, and more peace of mind. Peggy is originally from Nyack, New York, currently living in North Carolina with her husband, and her greatest joy is spending time with her children and grandchildren, and I echo that. Today, our theme is holistic approach to burnout. Of course, nobody on this audience cares anything about burnout, right? Okay, so get your pencils and papers out because we've got some notes to take. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Peggy Gleason. Welcome, Dr. Peggy.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that. It's lovely to be here.
Yes, well, the topic is one that, as I was joking, is something top of mind for a lot of people around the world, not just here in the US. But we always start out with easy question. I hinted to the answer to this, but tell everyone what part of the country you call home.
Right now, I call home North Carolina. I am an original New Yorker and proud of it. But I love where I live now. It's beautiful.
You know, I'm from Pittsburgh. And so at some point in time, we just say, I don't want snow. No more.
True story. True story.
So just let's start out right from the get-go. Tell me about burnout and your experiences with that.
You know, I had personal experience, so I got to know it real well. But burnout is something that, and I want to preface this by saying, not everybody knows they have burnout. Yeah. Burnout is when you're just starting to break down, so to speak, if that makes sense. You know, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you can't think straight, you're not sleeping, you're eating like a fool. can manifest in many ways. Yeah. But compassion fatigue, which is part of burnout, is when you lose passion for what you do. And that's what's happened to the frontliners during COVID. They were so burned out. It's not like they didn't care, but they were starting to get detached because your heart is exhausted. Everything is exhausted. And, you know, when people suffer from compassion fatigue, particularly, it's heartbreaking because the very passion they have, they're losing. They become indifferent. They still do their job, but they start disengaging. and it breaks their heart because they think something's wrong with them. Like, why am I not excited about this? Why, this was something I worked so hard to do and I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. But things break. And in my experience, at the time, I was a single mom for a bit and more than a minute. And I had aging parents. I was in critical care. Actually, I was running one of the largest critical care units in New York. And I was waking up super early in the morning, getting everything done, like all women, right?
Yeah, right.
Burnout is not just healthcare workers, and I
Yeah.
work with women from all walks of life. I just am. I just have a lot of people in the nursing industry that are kind of drawn, but I found that I get migraines every day. Well, I dealt with them. I never missed a day of work, but boy, oh boy, were they wicked! And it wasn't till I realized having a standing appointment with a neurologist was not normal.
Yeah.
Something that had to be given. And it did wake me up. And I thought, this is not okay. Something's wrong here, between my GI system and, my headaches and stuff. My body was rebelling at what I was doing to it. So that was wake up. And I think the point is, most people do not know they are actually in the throes of burnout. They're blaming it on something else.
Right.
But it is part of the process.
So true. And, you have your new moms, you have the executive that's trying to climb the ladder. You have the people that are trying to juggle 50 balls at once. And you just go on with life and you think, well, I can't stop. But sometimes you get stopped.
Yes. And, because we don't look at just the job. It's how that intersects with everything else in your life. Because with burnout, you're on a slow burn, right? And that's what I call it, the slow burn, before you really get sick from it. And, your relationships are affected. Your eating, as I mentioned, is affected. You don't exercise purposefully. You might run around like a rabbit, but you're not really purposefully moving for healthy reasons. Financial, it affects all 12 dimensions of well-being.
Wow. So you went into a lot of the signs. When you see those signs, what should you do?
I think you should pause and take note of what's really going on with yourself and seek some help. There is plenty of people that do understand this. I know sometimes people are reluctant, women particularly, they're reluctant to go to a doctor about this. I think probably going to coach is a little better, or social worker, or somebody that understands it better, because you don't want to be given just a Band-Aid, a pill. That's not gonna work. And that's one of the things that makes me a little crazy is when, people go for help because they're exhausted, and they give them, here's some Ambien and then, Xanax or something else, and they give them medication, and it just puts a Band-Aid on it. Never, ever gets to the root cause. I think the biggest thing people can do, and maybe the first thing, and something I feel very strongly about, is look at where your time is going. Look at everything you're doing in a given day. How many people are you helping, instead of helping yourself?
And yourself, right.
Because part of the reason people get burned out is because they don't know how to say no.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of what people think, or they feel funny about being judged to say no, and also they think they're being rude when you're not really. Look at how much time you're spending on devices. That's usually the first thing that I look at. Is take a time study on yourself and look at where all that time is going and how much time are you allotting to you. Because if you don't take time and slot that time, I mean, you have to schedule it as if it's a doctor's appointment. Schedule time, even if it's 5 minutes in the beginning. 5 minutes. Close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Think about your breath. That's 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So true.
And I think that's part of the issue is
Mm-hmm.
people they're not cognizant of what they're actually doing to themselves.
So do you have people that keep a journal in the beginning to just kind of, I know whenever I changed my diet and for all that time that I was working with a counselor, I wrote down everything I ate. Yes, it was a pain in the butt, but it was really eye-opening to
It
do
is
that.
eye-opening. And that's why I do have them do a time study by writing it down and write down every single thing that you have to do, all the things that you don't really have to do, because that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And just start noticing. And, I mean, it's exhaustive for some people to say, I don't have the time to do that. But you do. You do have the time. Put your device down, turn it off. Oh God, that's like the forbidden thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turn my phone off. God forbid.
Yeah.
But turn your phone off for 20 minutes and just kind of recollect the last full day you can remember. And just note all the things you did. You might not know how much time you spent on each thing,
Right.
but look at all those things you did, because that's a great place to start. Because what you're going to find out is you probably did stuff you didn't need to do.
Right. Right. Trying to be that perfect something, perfect mother, perfect
Yeah,
wife, perfect
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, perfect in your career, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, as we mentioned before, burnout is not it's everywhere. Let's just put
Yeah.
it's rampant. It's rampant right now, and it's a serious issue right now. And when you look, and I know statistics of nursing,
Mm-hmm.
the nursing profession right now, 44% are burned out that we know of. We
Wow.
know it's a lot higher. But all professional women, well, all women basically, but I work with all professional women. It's a very high statistic right now, particularly because of what happened in the last 2 years, because a lot of families had to do homeschooling.
Yeah.
Along with the shopping and the cleaning and the cooking and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
plus their career. So that's part of it.
Yeah, I definitely had several of my friends where they, cut out Toastmasters or whatever because they said, I never had to do anything but breakfast and dinner. Now I have to do breakfast, homeschool, be able to be 100% at my job, but also to keep these people doing their homework. And it was just too much. It was too
And
much.
think about, it's insane. It really
Mm-hmm.
is insane. And the fact that we keep doing it over and over and over. And I know there's a shortage of workers in every industry right
Yeah.
now. Everybody's struggling, and that's why it's getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's time to speak out about it. And I think making it more give it some awareness and respect women who can come forward and say, I need help.
Yeah.
I'm really juggling, and I'm not happy anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, more contentment is really important. We want people to be content in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
How many years do we have on this earth?
Yeah.
You know, we have to make it a priority.
Right. For sure. So you started to tell us this, but and why you're such an expert. You hinted that you lived through this. What's your story?
Well, I think I mentioned before just running around like a rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are quite old. They were quite elderly. My father had cancer. My mother she was not coping very well. And at the time, I had three kids that were really young. Um, and I was so pleased to do my job. I loved my job. I really did. But I I was burning the candle at both ends. I was
Mm-hmm.
also, by the way, studying for my doctorate all during the same time. So
It is what we do.
Because we think we
Yeah.
can. It's because we think we can. That's what I mean. We don't realize what we're doing to ourselves. And, I ended up with terrible insomnia with the migraines. It was quite impactful, is all I
Yeah.
can say. And I look back now at my life and how it's so different.
Yeah.
Like, my time is super important to me.
Mhm.
I do get up early, but that's because I like to get up early. That's where my brain works better. But
Mhm.
the first thing I do is, now I like my coffee in the morning. I'm a New Yorker and I like coffee. And I grab that coffee, I go to my favorite chair, sit quietly. I do meditate, but meditation can be different for everyone.
Right.
It can be your thoughts, it can be just your breath, it can be nothing.
Mhm.
But I find whatever works for me at that given time, and then I journal. And I think journaling is one of the best ways to start healing, because when you take something from your heart, your head, to your hand, to paper, it's amazing how relieving it is. Because
Mhm.
the purpose of journaling isn't to make it all fancy, it's what you're thinking is going down there. It's freestyle. And I recommend that for everyone. Just freestyle, write what you're thinking, write what's on your mind, and then say goodbye to it.
Mhm.
Say a thank you. Be grateful.
Mhm.
Grateful for being able to let go of it, and then
Right.
shut the book and have a good day.
That's right. It does bring insight to what's in your head. You might have thought it was just a passing thing, but if it comes out in the journal, it's got to be something that's needed to be put down on that paper.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes the smallest things you don't think really have any meaning, when you start looking at it and feeling it, because you tend to feel when you're journaling,
Mhm.
all of a sudden you wait a minute, there is something to that. I'm not going crazy. There really is something to that.
Right. So how does this differ from having that compassion fatigue?
Well, I think compassion fatigue, I could say it differs, but I have to be honest with you. I haven't met anybody with burnout that doesn't have compassion fatigue. I think there is some people that have compassion fatigue and maybe are not burned out completely, like physically having symptoms, but they're just getting detached or sick of it. They're
Yeah.
just, I'm not dealing with it and I'm not doing it anymore type of disengagement.
So how do you help nurses to begin to tackle the burnout that they've felt over the last 2 years or decade?
Or decades.
That's
And
right.
it's like I say, it's not just nurses, because I work with a lot
Yeah.
of other women. The first thing I do is I make an appointment and do like an overall assessment of where they are, not just in their health, but there are so many different areas of wellness that I do like to address. So we look over all of the dimensions of wellness, and it's a wonderful way to really help them realize where they're at. And it can be relationships and moving and eating and self-care and self-love. It can be all of those things, even intellectual and emotional. And there's so many different areas. So because they all integrate, when we
Yeah.
say integrative medicine, they integrate, all those areas go together. So that's the first thing I recommend they do, is just set up an appointment and we go over it together to see what is it that's going on and what's the best way to approach it, because everybody's going to be different.
So hearing that, I would think that in realistic terms, a half an hour appointment is not going to unravel something that you spent decades doing. How often do you have to talk with a person? And I know it's individual, but on a typical basis, how long does a self-discovery take for people?
I usually try, what I do is I have programs where people can get into my workshops where we will look at one dimension at a
Oh,
time.
nice.
And what we'll do is they'll look at a lesson. I'll send them something, and then we will have live coaching. And we'll have a group of people, like-minded people that are going
Mm-hmm.
through the same thing. And we just sort of go through it. And you get a lot of me time in there. And we work on it. Some people just knowing that they're not the only
Yeah,
people
I was
going through it
just gonna say
is
that.
really the magic. It really is the magic, because then they go, they'll bring up things like, my director doesn't even care what I do. They're telling me I can't go home at the end of the day. They don't realize I'm exhausted. I have kids at home and I cannot leave. That's a true story, by the way.
Mm.
That does happen in healthcare, in hospitals. And you'll be charged with abandonment of a patient, and then they're, of course, they're frustrated.
Yeah.
Some people will just say, my husband and I hardly even talk anymore because I just don't have time. I'm too tired,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think the group thing is really important. You get a deeper discovery. As far as going over initially, it doesn't have to take that long, because a lot of it they can do on their own. Once we
Mm-hmm.
meet each other, we can I can guide them into this is what I want you to really look at and take your time with. Here's a workbook. I want you to really dig deep and answer all these questions, because that's going to help identify where you are in the process,
Mm-hmm.
what is really happening with
Yeah.
you in your health and your well-being, your mindset, particularly, because that's one of the most important things to work on. And then we know where to work. We can go
Yeah.
from there.
And that is so true. I think that you cannot discount the benefits of having that group that is in the same situations, same mindset that you are. Knowing that you are not alone is such a huge benefit.
Yes, I agree. And I absolutely adore doing group coaching. I've been doing it for a lot of years. And I'll be honest with you, I get a lot out of it,
Yeah.
not just them. I
I
I
know.
leave like on a high, because
Mhm.
I know that it's been such a release for everyone.
Yeah, so true. So how does the Dr. Peggy 20 years ago, or as a 20-year-old, what kind of advice are you giving her, that 20-year-old?
I am
Then,
telling her the most important person you need to take care of is you. You can always help other people, but make sure you learn how to set boundaries and say no gracefully. And don't feel guilty about saying no. If you want to help people and you have space for it, great. But take care of yourself first, and absolutely start now on carving out time for you, for your joy, for your well-being. I actually think the generations behind me got better at that than I was when I was younger, because
yeah,
many years ago, you didn't know that was okay to do. So that's what I would tell my 20-year-old self.
and that's so true because, you had to take care of your kids and elderly parents, which are just like taking care of your kids, and that guilt of, oh my God, I can't tell them no, I can't tell them this is me time. It's just so damaging to your self-care.
It is damaging, and people don't understand there are ways to do it. And in my workshops, I do teach people how to do that, because
Oh,
people don't know how to do that.
yeah,
And they learn this is how you can say no. This is how you can still have time for yourself without neglecting the ones in your love, the ones you love. You don't want to ever have that.
right. Okay, it is time for rapid fire. This is where we'll give some questions or phrases and just whatever comes top of mind. So talk to me about multitasking.
Definitely not a good idea. It is a myth.
We were so proud of it.
Oh my God, I was the queen of
I
multitasking.
know.
And the brain takes so much longer. When you're multitasking and you switch from this to this, your brain has to try to pause and figure it out, and then try to pause and figure out where they left off. You're not as effective. People think it's a great time management. It's not. It's terrible. You know, the mind can only focus on one thing at a time, and that is the truth.
Yeah. So how do you achieve burnout, busting, better sleep?
Oh, wow.
Say that 3 times.
My favorite topic, because I told you I suffered with insomnia for a long time. And that's another it's actually a whole course that I give or, workshop. And there's many, many different things. A lot of it has to do with your environment. A lot has to do with what you put in your mouth before you go to bed. It has a lot to do with your partner. You might have a very noisy partner, but there are so many things. There's a lot of things about blue light, and we can go on and on, but there's a whole plethora of great tips for you to learn on how to sleep more soundly.
Okay, so again, everybody, she has a workshop on that. Talk to us about the challenges today with employee engagement.
Oh, employee engagement is that's probably the hardest part for a lot of people, because when I talk with, per se, women that are working under a director or a boss or something, they're fearful. They're very fearful that they will get in trouble. They'll lose their job. They shouldn't speak up. I think that's part of another whole issue. And there are ways for you to communicate. Again, it's all about doing things gracefully, right? That's what we want. We want to improve our communication. We want to be heard, but we also want to be understood. And that comes through communicating and setting boundaries. And again, that's another thing that goes into the workshop. And I could go on and on about that too.
Yeah, that just brings to mind, it's really not something that's just with women, but I know that women are less apt to talk about being tired and exhausted because they're competing against men. And the truth of the matter is the men are just as burned out as we are oftentimes.
They absolutely are, but they will never admit it.
And that's why men die sooner than we do.
Well, yeah, because they, pride is a silent killer.
Yeah, sure. Self-care, moms, nurses, you name it. Why do we overlook it? I think we've talked about this, but I think, I could talk about this for days and days, because it is just one of my passion topics that we've got to take better care of ourselves.
Well, we do. And the first thing, and my signature course does address this, is understanding how to create time for your self-care.
Yeah.
And that's a whole course. And there are so many ways that you can achieve that. The bottom line is you have to do a little work with your mindset, because I think that's where most of the problems women have right now is their mindset needs to be reset.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work with how we think, what our inner person starts telling us, like, oh my God, you can't do that. You have to do this. We hear this little person on our shoulder, and we have to learn how to, I call it taming the gremlin. And there's a book called Taming the Gremlin, how to tame your gremlin. And that's a really important thing.
Yeah.
To learn some techniques on how to tame your inner voice so that you will take that time for yourself and do the self-care.
And it just feels so good too.
And I also think another thing that, we can include in that is time with our friends.
Yeah.
That's self-care. And you know what? Once you make a date to go shopping or to go out to lunch or to do something, that's an accountability. And I think that's another thing that works to help us to do that self-care. You got to have some accountability.
Right. One of the things when COVID just got to be real underway in 2019, I was so worried. I had done a lot of work with my church, and I was so worried about all of the older people that were shut in and terrified. So I started to do Zoom lunches where we would just chat. So it was so wonderful just to chat and make sure that they were okay. And, do you need me to go by and get something at the store for you? But
what a beautiful way to serve. That's beautiful. And you're right there.
Yeah.
You benefited from it. The giving was rewarding for you. And that also, in an indiscreet way, is a way of self-care.
Yeah, because it made me feel great to see that they were doing okay or feeling good. And, I think there's creative ways to do, we just have to be innovative and think about it.
Exactly. And creativity is a big part of what people learn when I'm working with them is, I do vision workshops. Let's look at your future vision. Let's bring your catalogs, bring your scissors, bring some stars, stickers, anything you want. And we used to do that, all the time when I had live coaching. But even that was a breakaway from the exhaustion. It was something that made them smile and be happy and look forward.
Takes your mind off of everything.
You have to. You have to.
That's why I love reading books. Just lets me go to that place.
Yeah. Another self-care suggestion, if you are a music bug like I am, put on your favorite music.
Yeah.
Just put it on and let everything melt away. Like, just forget about everything for a whole 4 songs.
Yeah, right.
4 songs.
Yeah. So true. The very last one is, how did you pivot the last 2 years?
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's a good question. And it was quite a pivot for me.
Yeah,
I was so used to going to, I had a place in my church. I had my own room and everything. And I had, what I needed for my groups. And then the groups were no longer, and they did not want to do online. They just said, no, it's not going to be the same. So I had to start all over with that particular group. Then I kind of coaxed them a little bit. Some of them were older and it just didn't fit for them. And that was okay. I still keep in touch with them on a different level. But I think the pivoting was a great thing. I think the only thing that stood my way was the darn technology and the autoresponders and all the stuff in between and making everything work the right way. Again, I could have said, I'm going to burn out on the technology, but then I realized, delegate. I teach everybody else to delegate.
That's right.
I have to delegate. So I did okay. It was a little bit of a challenge initially because it was, again, now I have to get out there in a different way.
Yeah.
I did, and things are rolling really well now. But I can't lie to you. There was a little freeze zone there for a bit. But with some creativity, I got back on the road.
Yeah, it just opens such a whole new world. Now Dr. Peggy Gleason can touch and help people around the world as if they were right next door in North Carolina. So
loving that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, it's time now for me to warn all those that are just listening to grab that pencil and paper. If you've not already done so, you missed a lot of great tips if you didn't, but I'm going to share Dr. Gleason's information. All right, so we have professional women's Plural.
It is
Wellness.
WOMANS on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yes. Professional Women's Wellness.com. She's on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram as Peggy Gleason. Twitter, she's PG_PWW. Pinterest, she's Peggy GG. Oh.
That's my grandma name.
I know. I'm Oma.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
And so she has a gift that I'm going to let her talk to you about.
Well, that actually, I look at that video and actually that is something else. I'm going to add another gift for the listeners, but that right there is an invitation not only to a free gift, which you'll love this because it is how to set boundaries and say no gracefully.
Nice, nice.
So you are going to get that, but that also will be a page where you can join me for a free workshop. Both things are on that page.
Awesome. I'm just writing the notes. So how to set boundaries and
say no gracefully. The other thing that I do have available might be also on that page. I have to double check, to be honest with you, but I have a passport to wellness.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if anybody wants that, I can give you that link in addition if you'd like it.
Sure, we'll put that in.
An awesome, awesome workbook. And it's all yours for nothing.
Thank you.
We'll go over all of those dimensions of wellness, the 8 wellness areas. And you can actually look at that and see where you are. And then if you do want to go further, then you can contact me.
Well, it has been just such a joy talking with you, Dr. Peggy. We had so many things that we covered. I definitely want to have you back in the Thanksgiving time, because I think it's a great time where people start to get burned out and start to get overwhelmed. And I think it's a great time for us to have another session to talk about it.
I would absolutely love to come back around that time, because I know that's when I hear the most about craziness. I can't take it. And the relatives are coming. I don't want to sit around the table with them.
It's like, I don't want to decorate the house. I don't, and all the things that, really bring me joy. I hear people just complaining about, and it is about mindset, true. But, when you're burned out, and it doesn't make any difference how beautiful the end result's going to be. If you're tired, you're tired.
You're tired, absolutely. But we'll work on some real good tips for that time. Awesome. So stay tuned for some good stuff.
Excellent. So again, as always, I remind everyone, life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Nettling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nettling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.